Nick, I just want to welcome you.
Thanks.
We are doing our first podcast together to just bring awareness to regenerative farming. And your story has fascinated me over the last 2 years. We connected over social media and I saw what you were doing and was amazed.
And you have some backstory too with the Back to Eden method, which is pretty cool.
So today is going to be all about gardening and helping people wake up to the fact that the traditional methods are stripping the soil of all of its resources. And so this goes out to all the young people and even older people alike, that it's time to change. So introduce yourself and tell us why you're here.
Howdy, I'm Nick Ager with Growing Back to Eden. I've been teaching regenerative agriculture all over the country and online for quite a while. I'm a regenerative farmer and I hate talking about myself.
No, I love it. You're so humble. So one thing, Nick, I was going to ask you a question about. You've been able to coach billionaires with how they do their gardening. How did the first billionaire reach out to you? And just give me a short little statement, a little story of how that happened.
It was right around when Corona started. He pretty much fled New York, moved to Montana, looked up beautiful gardens because he wanted to grow food for his family. Apparently my videos were the first to pop up and he's like, I want it. He contacted me, flew me out there. I consulted for him. He had 20 acres, got all excited after I designed the garden and then went and bought 1,000 times what he had already.
So he had 20 acres and then he went and bought
20,000 acres.
20 more thousand acres.
Yeah, so he got pretty excited.
When you're consulting for this gentleman, that opened up your eyes to see where sort of the world is heading.
I kind of already knew that these types of people, they see things coming before us poor folks do. And yeah, they've been scooping up land left and right.
Why do you think that these billionaires are like buying up all this land?
Real estate is the only real investment nowadays. They're not making any more of it. If they owned all the land and lease it to the poor people, business mindset, I guess.
Yeah. Can you bring us back to the early days where you started first gardening?
Okay, so my mom remembers me crawling, like I don't know how old I was. I was crawling, so I wasn't walking yet. But I crawled into the neighbor's yard, picked seeds out of her flowers, brought them home and put them in like a coffee can and grew flowers on the porch. Nobody ever in my family was a gardener, so it was just natural.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So after that, can you bring us back to what happened when you were in school?
I remember in 4th grade, starting seeds is like a fun project for Mother's Day. My teacher had them all on the little windowsill and I just knew everything was gonna not do good. And so I pretty much just took over that whole project for the class and was like giving them so much advice on like how to do it the right way. And then I did an after school program and talked about gardening a lot of the times and it was pretty cool.
One thing that you said yesterday was really, really profound. Everything starts with the soil.
Yeah.
You are what you eat. We are what we eat.
Yeah,
I agree. Step us back into history and explain why regenerative farming is the only answer moving forward.
I don't know if it's the only answer. Right now, it's the only one that makes sense. Like in 20 years, there's probably gonna be something better. And that's what I love most about gardening and farming is it's the most humbling career, passion and purpose or whatever, because you'll never know it all. Like, you'll keep learning and it never ends. You got to die and meet God before you figure it all out. And even then, who knows?
So you talked about there being an insane amount of topsoil when the Pilgrims first came over, or like even when the natives were living here. Why was there so much topsoil and why is it all gone?
I mean, the Native Americans didn't, for lack of a better word, rape the land. They took care of it. They were stewards. They had that connection with the earth. When God put us in the garden, that was our job. But it wasn't until Adam ate the apple, got kicked out, and that's when man began to till the soil. Then we started raping the land thinking, oh, we got to do all this stuff to produce food, but just look around and God's providing for you. The natives understood that, but we came and tilled up all the land in America and just depleted the soils and caused so much topsoil to just run off, and we've lost a lot. It takes 100 years to build an inch of topsoil. It's crazy.
100 years to build
and we're losing it faster than that. We're probably losing a couple inches every couple of years, maybe. It's crazy, yeah.
That's happening across the entire United States every year. So what's the number one killer of topsoil?
Tilling. I always tell everybody, I swear I'm gonna make it into a hat, tilling is killing. Okay, think about a city. If you are a microbe in the soil and the city is the soil, and you come through with a tiller in proportion to you being a microbe and just till up that whole city, your life is going to be so chaotic, like it just destroys everything. In order to rebuild that city, it takes time, it takes resources, it takes a lot. That's when regenerative practices and principles come in and basically speed up the process. Nature would fix itself over time, but our fingerprint of tilling that soil will always be there. So if we come in and bring the organic matter, more biology to re-inoculate the soils, create a good environment for nature to do its thing, the plants do better, the biology comes back, and it regenerates.
So explain your process. Pretend I'm a brand new gardener. I grew up with this growing back to Eden method. I grew up with so
You watched the Back to Eden film with Paul.
yes, that inspired us to just cover our entire garden with wood chips.
Yep.
Everyone thought we were crazy. Bring us back to the beginning, how someone can start, how they can set up their garden from A to Z in like maybe 5 steps, sort of a broad overview.
Okay, so if you're following the traditional Back to Eden method, first I'm actually going to say this. So many people think an initial till is like a sin in the Back to Eden world. I don't see it as that. If you look at Paul's garden, I mean, he tilled for 17 years straight, almost weekly, to just keep the weeds back before he figured out just covering the ground and doing no-till was the way to go. I look at that as an example of how doing an initial till isn't the end of the world, because here he's been there 44 years or something now. I mean, when you stop tilling and put that organic matter down, nature does the rest. It regenerates.
Yeah.
So after 17 years of destroying his soil, some of the most fertile soil in Washington, and grows some of the nicest plants, an initial till is not the end of the world.
Gotcha.
I would recommend doing an initial till, depending on your soil structure. If it's compacted and if you have a ton of weeds, it just knocks them back a decent amount. You can either tarp it for a couple months in the summer, which would eliminate all of your weeds. It's a big problem with people with Back to Eden gardens is they don't put enough cardboard and then chips down. Stuff like dandelions and other rhizomial grasses still shoot up, and then they message me asking, well, what do I do? And I'm like, well, now you got to just hand pull everything and get out there and weed the garden. But if you tarp it after tilling,
What type of tarp?
I would use a silage tarp. It's like 6 mil black plastic, basically.
Awesome. So you tarp it all.
Tarp it, put sandbags down so it doesn't blow away. And if it's in the summer, it heats up the surface of the soil. Doesn't really kill a lot of biology. It'll kill some, but it regenerates. It's fine. That black plastic actually encourages other things like worms and stuff to come up, and you'll peel that tarp off and there'll be so much life under there.
Bugs running around, they've made burrows and
Yep.
ants and all sorts of
Yep.
stuff. They've all come to the surface because it's covered.
Yep. And when you've got worms and stuff coming to the surface, that's aerating a disturbed soil and a compacted soil. So tarping does a lot.
So I got my tarp down.
You got the tarp
It's been
down.
done. Well, 3 months, 2 months?
Whatever it takes until the grass is dead, basically.
Dead. How do you know it's dead?
When you peel it off and there's no plant matter that's alive.
It's like all eaten.
Yeah.
It's just like
Like it could take 2-3 weeks in some places. It could take 3 months, could take all summer. If you do it in the winter, it'll definitely take a while. It depends.
Gotcha. So I got my tarp down. Now the garden is ready to start. What's the next step?
Next step, peel the tarp off, fold it up, put it away. If you plan on expanding the garden like next year or something, I would just move the tarp and let it sit from that point until you're ready to start the garden. You can buy a small tarp. Don't despise the days of small beginnings, and do small sections at a time and just keep flipping that tarp over, keep using it. So anyways, we're back to our main garden. We've peeled the tarp off. I would put a couple inches of compost if you can, leaves, manures, whatever you want. Ideally something with some more nitrogen. As that gets rained on and irrigated, it seeps through the chips and breaks your chips down even quicker, so you build soil faster. I could talk forever about the ways you can layer to really build soil faster. And then I personally would never go more than 4 inches of wood chips in a garden.
Sweet. So how many inches of compost?
As much as you can.
So maybe like 8 inches of compost.
If you can do 8 inches of compost, you'll love it. At the same time,
It's expensive.
it's expensive. But then I always try and remind people, nowhere in nature does 8 inches of anything hit the ground unless it's snow. I used to have this debate with Paul all the time. Like, he'd tell people, oh, put 18 inches of wood chips down in your orchard and it'll be great. Well, at 18 inches deep, there's not much oxygen getting to that soil. You're basically suffocating the native biology that's way down there, and it's going to take time before it gets all the way up in those chips and inoculates it and starts to break it down. It's a lasagna. You don't want 8 inches of pasta before you put your next layer. You want layer pasta, layer meat, layer cheese, sauce,
Yeah. That's a great analogy. And that's how you build a garden.
Yeah.
So wood chips are on top of the compost now. So you got maybe 4 inches of compost, 4 inches of wood chips, roughly.
Yeah.
Now your garden is set. Do you just plant seeds into it?
A lot of people think you can just do it all in the spring. I never recommend starting a garden in the spring. Like Paul always says, if you look at nature, God always fertilizes and starts his gardens in the fall. That's why it's called fall. The needles and leaves drop. They create that wood chip ground cover. And all winter, as the snow and rain is falling, that's slowly breaking down and fertilizing the soil for the spring growth. So if you're coming at it in the spring, it's not the end of the world. You can do it. It takes time for the garden to really settle in, and you might come up with some problems. You might not. You might get lucky. Depends on your compost. But if you do it in the fall, definitely do 4 to 6 inches of chips. By spring, it'll be decomposed a little more, so you'll be able to rake into that and get into the compost, plant into the compost, and leave your wood chips spread apart of the row.
Spread apart a little bit.
You'd make a furrow. I think a lot of the problems I see is people just covering 4 inches of chips back over the seeds, and then they're gone.
The seeds can't fight till that wood.
They're down there.
So you got to leave that furrow open. It's going to sort of
let
mound
the
up to
plants
the right
grow,
level.
and then gravity works, and those chips will eventually fall back in place. Like, I've never spent time pushing chips up around plants. Like, it's a waste of time. And a lot of times, when you've got a little seedling like that, its stem is no thicker than a pencil. And so when you go and put a couple inches of chips around it, you're restricting it. If nature does its thing and gravity works and those chips slowly move up as that stem gets stronger and stronger, the plant's just not going to struggle. It doesn't have to push anything out of its way to expand.
Wow, that's awesome. So what do you do to maintain this type of garden?
If you've set up your Back to Eden garden properly, you're not going to have a lot of weeds. The only weeds that would really be a problem would be stuff that blows in, seed and stuff, and germinates on the surface, and then you just go through and pull a weed. I have a rule of thumb where if you're walking in your garden, which should be every day, if you see a weed, don't look at it and think, oh, I'm going to weed on Wednesday. You just pull the weed. It doesn't take any time to bend over and pick one weed. And if you have that mindset and you keep it every day, then you never have a weed. So many people think, oh, I got to go weed the garden.
And they do it all in one day.
Yeah.
But they spend all day out there and they dread going out there and weeding.
And then it makes it to the point where gardening is a lot of work. And that's just doesn't make any sense to me.
I love it.
My gardens, I don't have the wood chip layer for efficiency's sake. Doesn't make sense. With a wood chip garden, you're typically planting one row and you're spacing your rows out however much you want to do it. I do biointensive gardening with my market garden because I grow for production. I'm not just growing for myself. I'm growing for hundreds of families every week with the markets, farmers markets. Back to Eden garden, because you have to rake your chips aside and plant in your furrows and stuff, you've got to space it a little more.
Gotcha.
So with compost as your ground cover and not having the wood chip layer, you can obviously plant closer. So my spacing in my garden creates what I consider a living ground cover. So my crops themselves act as the wood chips. The roots are building soil and the foliage shades it, protects it. So I've got fungi that comes right to the surface. All my biology is right at the surface. Everybody freaks out like, oh, you don't have wood chips. It's not protecting the soil. It's just exposed. I'm like, well, if you look at a pasture, there's no wood chips. It's grass.
It's covered in grass.
And grass. And you move that thatch layer aside, it's nice soil. Okay, so you can look at a garden like you would a pasture. An orchard you would think of as woods. So in an orchard setting or the woods, you've got wood chips.
Yeah.
In a pasture, you've got grass, which is just foliage. The only carbon you're getting is dried grass. Should be the same in a garden. I kind of went off on a tangent.
No, I love it though. I think what you're doing here is you're giving people a little bit of a window into your life on how you understand and the reason why you do everything you do.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like you're really connected to God's heart in a special way, because Eden was his first garden.
Mm-hmm.
So
God's a gardener and an arborist.
Exactly.
That's what I do. That's what Paul does. It's pretty cool to be in the same line of work as God, so to speak. That sounds so bad, but it's true.
It's true. No, it's awesome. Jesus was a carpenter.
Yeah.
So how can someone out there find you? How can they get connected to you? And what's your encouragement to someone that's wanting to start out in a garden?
Just do it. Like, even if you're like right now, you've got pots out on the back patio. Just do it. Like, so what if it doesn't work? You learn. Now you know what wasn't working. But yeah, just start. Like, as soon as you see the seed germinate, you're gonna get the bug to plant more. Even if it doesn't grow, just keep planting. You'll figure it out.
It's a miracle.
Yeah.
It's a miracle. And do you think it's therapeutic at all too?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. You need your hands in the dirt. Having that connection. I mean, God walked with Adam every day in the garden. You get a connection when you spend time outside.
What's your encouragement to these up and coming farmers?
Nowadays, there's the regenerative and market farming fad, for lack of a better word. Like, everybody wants to do it because it's all a bunch of people that spend most of their youth in office jobs. They make a bunch of money. They're like, oh, I hate my life. I'm gonna be a farmer, grow organic produce, and work outside every day. Yeah, it's amazing. Everybody has their purpose, and they're calling. And I don't feel like everybody is meant to be these market farmers and gardeners and stuff. And so they struggle and their properties are disasters. You really just have to pray about it. Like, what's your purpose? Like, I know what I'm doing is what I was meant to do.
Yeah.
Like, there's no denying it. Yeah, you just got to find what your gift is, and your gift will make way for you.
Where has your gift taken you? Do you mind explaining that a little bit? Like,
I mean, I was 18 when I moved cross country by myself to go take care of Paul's gardens and help him. And I was in Washington State and was there for, I think, about a little over 4 years maybe. And then moved out to Montana for that billionaire guy. Left there, went to Virginia. Joel Salatin, he called me. He's like, hey, you want to work for another billionaire? And I'm like, sure. So moved to Virginia, started farming there for somebody, left there to the next project. Now I'm in Florida farming, and I've consulted all over the country. It's pretty cool because I've got a lot of experience all over, even if I personally didn't grow there. So I got people in California I've consulted for. I've got people literally all over. They're constantly asking me questions. I'm seeing pictures and videos of their soil. I'm walking them through on how to build it and how to be successful at gardening there. So if I can teach somebody else how to do it, I'm basically growing that garden with them to a degree.
absolutely.
So I've been able to learn like how to grow anywhere in the country. When I moved to Florida, everybody and their brother wanted to say, oh, you can't grow garden in Florida. It's so much harder. Like, good luck. And I was like, watch. Now everybody's just like blown away at like what I did in 1 year of being in Florida.
And it was sugar sand that you were growing on. Like,
yeah,
it was like white sand that you dig down for 3 feet. It's white sand. That's powerful. That's incredible. Thank you.
It's pretty cool. So you can do it anywhere.
That's awesome. So Nick, this gardening method is definitely something that's newer. It's not like 300-400 years old as of like a top method. It's been there all this time.
It's been there since the beginning.
Yeah.
God never tilled the soil. He just put the cover back. Every year in the fall, the leaves dropped, grass died. So we got disconnected. Now we just have to reconnect.
So how can people reconnect?
Doing everything I just said to do. Get out there, get your hands dirty. Life's too short to have clean fingernails.
I love that. I love it. Pedicures can be done later around the holidays, eh?
Yeah.
I love it. Well, Nick, you're such an encouragement to speak with, and I really hope that someone was blessed by this. Is there anything else that you want to drop into the chat? Just sort of like a truth bomb or a little golden nugget?
I guess while you were talking, I was thinking about like everybody growing more food. It was like feeding America or something.
Yeah, I probably think too big. It's my weakness.
No, it's totally feasible. As a whole, having conventional farmers shift from growing all this grain that feeds livestock that shouldn't even be eating grain. Regenerative agriculture just isn't gardening. You gotta look at like pasture health and raising livestock, and livestock build soil quicker than a garden will on a larger scale. I mean, if you think about it, if we converted 80% of the grain fields in the country back to pasture and grazed them, there would not be any food shortages in America.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
That's a really interesting thought.
Cows don't eat grain. They're not supposed to.
They're supposed to eat grass.
Yeah.
And
Sheep
hay.
are supposed to eat grass.
And hay.
Hay is grass.
Yeah, it's dried.
It's stored grass. Yeah.
So that's what it was back in the day though.
Yeah. Everybody wants to complain about how the cows are polluting the air or whatever, like cow farts and sheep farts are causing global warming or something stupid. Like, it's insane. Like, buffalo herd before European settlers was like, I'm gonna go low and say it was like 3 or 4 times the size of our national cattle population. And so you think, if our cows are polluting the air and causing global warming, what did those buffalo do? They were grazing, and they were building soil and sequestering carbon, regenerating the land the way it was supposed to be. Now that we're destroying the land to grow grain to feed to livestock that aren't supposed to eat grain, yeah, that's probably doing some damage and polluting waterways and stuff. So we just need to reroute our methods.
Do you have any ideas on like anything you've learned that we can do to
The biology can fix Roundup. It takes time. You gotta know what you're doing. It's a complicated process, but it's doable. Nature always wins.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here with me, man. I hope we've blessed a few people by this and inspired them to take the step that they need to take to get their regenerative garden going. Small little plot. I built myself 4 little plots out there.
Yep.
And it was fun.
Yep.
It was great. Spent $100 on soil.
Yep. And I'll send you some compost tea.
Heck yeah, dude.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So how can people connect with you?
Check out my YouTube channel. You can reach out on Instagram, Facebook, whatever.
Gotcha. How can they find you on YouTube?
Growing Back to Eden.
You're the best, dude.
Yep.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks.
You're the best.
Cool.